Hey everybody, welcome to Victory Lane for the Duel at Daytona. I'm Tyler Miller with DFSCheatSheet.com. We are talking about the Blue Green Vacations Duel at Daytona Thursday night. Coming up, you can watch it live on FS1 as the NASCAR Cup Series drivers are racing to determine their starting position for the 62nd running of the Daytona 500, which is coming up on Sunday. Daytona 500 is an interesting race, and in talking to Jeremy, DFS Dudes, earlier this week, I realized that maybe I should take some time to explain how the qualifying process works, because this is different than any other race that we'll have all year long. So what happened was last weekend, the cars showed up at Daytona. Cup cars practiced on Saturday. And then on Sunday, they had single lap qualifying. All the cars took one timed lap around Daytona International Speedway by themselves. And the fastest car was Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He is the pole sitter for the Daytona 500. Alex Bowman was the second quickest car. He will start on the outside of the pole position. Those two are set. The rest of the field will start the Daytona 500 based on... Well, they will start the Daytona 500 based on how they finish the Duel at Daytona Thursday night. So they will start the Duel based on how they qualified. So the odd number qualifiers, 3, 5, 7 on back, they will be in Duel 1. The even numbered qualifiers, 2, 4, 6, 8, and so forth, will start Duel 2. How they finish will determine how they start the Daytona 500, with the inside row being made up of the Duel 1 finishers and the outside row of the Daytona 500 being made up of the Duel 2 finishers. There are 5 drivers who are not yet locked into the Daytona 500, and 2 of those 5 will make the race Thursday night. 3 of those 5 will be sent home and will not get to race in the Daytona 500. I've detailed this in the setup, which you can check out on DFSCheatSheet.com. But those 5 drivers who are not yet locked in, Reed Sorensen, Timmy Hill, Daniel Suarez, J.J. Yaley, and Chad Fincham, they did not qualify on time. There were 2 spots available to be qualified for on time during qualifying. Those 2 spots went to Brendan Gaughan and Justin Haley. So right off the bat, when we look at DFS for the Duel at Daytona, there's a couple of things we need to consider, and the first one is motivation. Who is motivated to race, who is not motivated to race. And obviously Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Alex Bowman don't really have much motivation. They may race up front at the beginning, but I would expect at least Stenhouse to fall back and just stay out of trouble, because as long as he keeps his car in one piece and starts the car that he qualified on Sunday, he will start on the pole position for the Daytona 500. Alex Bowman might race, he might not. Hendrick drivers, typically when they win the pole, they still race in their Duel. But Alex Bowman has had a second place starting position before, and we've seen him kind of fall back to the end of the lead lap to just stay out of trouble. So I think both of those guys are out as far as DFS formats go. You look at Brendan Gaughan and Justin Haley, they're racing for a starting position, but they're already locked in, so they don't have the motivation that guys like Daniel Suarez, J.J. Yaley, Chad Fincham, Reed Sorensen, and Timmy Hill have. And we'll talk about those, specifically one of those drivers that we're going to target in our lineups coming up on Thursday night. So that's, who's motivated, who's not motivated. What we're looking for in this race particularly, and what FanDuel has done is they've taken both of the races and combined it into one slate. So this is, I think, the only time of the year where you will have a slate where you're picking drivers and you could pick 2 winners. There will be 2 race winners. There will be two drivers who score the most points, in each of their races. So it's a little bit different than what we usually see. It's more of like a football game where you're playing quarterback against quarterback, and their games are going on simultaneously on a Sunday afternoon. So this is unique for me, and to be quite honest with you, I didn't even know they did DFS contests for the duels until yesterday when I figured that out. So I've done some cramming, a lot of good information. If you want to check out the site, the setup and victory lane are posted at dfscheatsheet.com. You can check that out. But the main key here is there are 2 races. They're 60 laps each. So what does that mean? Well, that means there's only 6 points available for laps led. And that's important in how we look at these drivers and who we assess as a playable driver, who we include into our player pool. Whether you're playing one lineup like I typically do, or you play multiple lineups in Cascade, which is something that a lot of you guys do who play NBA or MLB specifically, and even NFL. You pick a core and then kind of cascade one and then one after the other. So, the value to me is what we're going to be looking at, drivers outside of the top 10 who can finish in the top 5. Because now differential points are going to mean more than laps led. So while, in my opinion, I think I could pick the winner between Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin in the first duel, and Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick in the second duel. I think those are probably your favorites. These guys, Hamlin and Elliott, Hamlin's starting third, Elliott second in the first duel. Kyle Busch is starting third, and Kevin Harvick's starting sixth in the second duel. Those guys aren't really in play for me. I'm not looking to start them. If something happens, they get caught up in a wreck, which there may be wrecks. I don't expect it to be crazy like we saw in the Busch Clash last Sunday, but there could be wrecks. Guys could have issues on pit road and fall to the back and then ride around because there's no point. They're just going to start at the back of the field, but they're fine. Then all of a sudden you're looking at negative differential points, no laps led, and these guys were really bad plays. Where when you look at, guys starting in the 11th to 15th range, they can move up 10 spots, gain 5 points, finish top 5. All of a sudden you have a really good day. You gain a couple of those guys in your lineup, even guys that could potentially lead laps and win the race from a 15th place starting position. I think that's where we want to be. So we'll look down the FanDuel pricing sheet. Brad Keselowski is your number one highest priced driver on FanDuel at $14K. I'm not on Brad Keselowski, and I'll tell you why. I think a lot of people will play him. He's starting 12th. He could potentially go plus 12, differential plus 11, I guess, up to win a race. He could lead laps, very possible. Here is Brad Keselowski's finishes in his last 2 qualifying races at Daytona. 20th, 16th. And then in 2017, he finished 4th after starting 2nd. And then in 2016, he finished 13th. And the year before that, 2015, he finished 19th. I'm not interested in Brad Keselowski. And I'll tell you why. It's not because he's not fast at Daytona, because we know he is, and he'll do well. He'll very much be in consideration for the Daytona 500 on Sunday. But for the qualifying races, if he doesn't care about where he qualifies, then we don't really need to play him. There's better plays, and especially much cheaper plays that I like better. My best play, and I wrote this up in Victory Lane, I think the best play for me is Ryan Blaney. You look at Ryan Blaney starting 14th in the first duel. He's my favorite high salary driver. He's been consistently good in these qualifying races. In his career, his finishes have been 6th, 1st, 19th, 3rd, and 6th. He has both of his teammates in this race. Keselowski's starting a couple spots in front of him. Joey Logano is starting in 6th in the first duel. For me, I think Blaney's a lock. Thursday night, starting 14th, he could win the race. Nobody would be surprised if Ryan Blaney won the first duel. So I think Blaney is my top guy. And then I think my second lock, if I'm going to lock 2 drivers in, I think I might lock 3 drivers in. My second lock is going to be Daniel Suarez. And this is a little bit more complicated, and it might get a little bit in the weeds. But Daniel Suarez, he is priced at $7,000 on FanDuel. He's priced at $6,200 on DraftKings. He's starting 19th in the first duel, which means there's only 3 drivers starting behind him, and those 3 are Quinn Huff, Chad Fincham, and Joey Gase. And those 3 will probably finish behind him in 20th, 21st, and 22nd position. Daniel Suarez needs to make this race. He has to race his way in. He has to finish in front of Reed Sorensen. He needs to finish in front of Fincham. And I believe there's one other driver he needs to finish in front of. But either way, Suarez needs to run well and win this race. And not to win this race, but he needs to run well to make the race. And Daniel Suarez has the capability of doing that. He can run in the top 10. He's finished in the top 10 in qualifying races, albeit in much better equipment. But he's in a Toyota. It's a TRD engine. He's in a race with Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell and Mark. I think Truex is in the same race as him. I think these guys are going to work together because for the Gibbs drivers, it is beneficial. This is the 6th Toyota, right? You have the 1, 2, 3, 4 Gibbs drivers. You have Christopher Bell in the Levine car, and then you could have Daniel Suarez. That's a 6-car draft you could work with. 6 guys that you know will have your back in the Daytona 500. I think they'll do everything they can to help Daniel Suarez race his way in. I don't think it's going to be all that hard for Daniel Suarez to race his way into the race, but I think starting 19th, he could easily be plus 12 in differential, finish 7th, and nobody would even notice because that's where he could be. I mean, that car, it's a part-time car. This is the car Parker Kligerman ran last year, but I think overall that's a really good play. The other driver that I'm considering locking into this is honestly Kurt Busch. When we look at Kurt Busch starting 11th in Duel 2, I think Kurt Busch scores the most points in Duel 2. 8 of his last 10 Duel races at Daytona, he's finished in the top 5. Including a win back in 2011. If you look at Kurt Busch, here's his finishes: Daytona 500 qualifying results, starting with last year: 5th, 3rd, 12th, 3rd, 5th, 14th, 1st, 4th. That's his Duel races in the past decade. It's solid. It doesn't get much more consistent than that. That's starting from all kinds of starting positions inside and outside of the top 10. Kurt Busch, I didn't play him in the Busch Clash, and I'm trying not to consider that or take that into consideration because it was a bit of a mistake to not play him. It wasn't really a mistake to not play him. It was a mistake to not play who I played instead of him. Not to get too wordy here, but I think he's a solid play here. Starting 11th, Kurt Busch could lead laps and win the race. Kurt Busch could finish in the top 3, top 5. His history shows 80% of his last 10 races he finished in the top 5. That's solid. I think it's a good play. Kurt Busch 10-5 on FanDuel, 9,000 on DraftKings, starting 11th in Duel 2. I think he's right there as good of a play as Suarez and Blaney. The next play that I'm going to highlight is going to be Bubba Wallace. Bubba he's 6,500 on FanDuel, 6,600 on DraftKings. He's starting 17th in Duel 1. And he's starting in a section of Duel 1 that I really want to focus on. We'll talk about Bubba Wallace, we'll talk about Austin Dillon, and we'll talk about Justin Haley. All right, these guys are starting Duel 1. Austin Dillon's 15th, Haley 16th, Bubba Wallace 17th. The thing to understand about this is Justin Haley is making the first career start for colleague racing. And I like Justin Haley. I think Justin Haley is a sneaky good play if you're playing multiple lineups in a tournament. I think he's even in consideration if you're just putting one lineup out there as a good value play. But I think Bubba Wallace is probably the play here, the best overall play, and I think he'll be chalk because Bubba's starting 17th. These are all ECR engines. These are all technical alliances. Justin Haley is basically running an RCR Cup car with an RCR crew chief, but somebody else is paying the bills. It's Colleague Racing's first start in the Cup Series. So I like all 3 of these guys. I like them in the order of Bubba Wallace, then Austin Dillon, then Justin Haley. I think those are all solid plays. I think Bubba is borderline lock button for Thursday night. And then I'll give you one more play that I really like, and it's from Duel 2, and it's also related to RCR. It's Ty Dillon in the Geico car. Ty starting 15th in Duel number 2. He has a solid history in qualifying races. He has teammates or alliance teammates, Tyler Reddick and Brendan Gaughan, to draft with. I'm not sure how much Brendan Gaughan's actually going to draft, just like I'm not really sure how much Justin Haley is going to race up front. I heard an interview with Haley during Media Day on Wednesday, and he said he wants to run up front. He wants to see what his car can do. He won the race in July because of rain and pit strategy. He didn't have a good car at all, really, but he was on the lead lap. stayed out. Everyone else pitted. It rained. He won. So Justin Haley, he wants to see how much better is this car. Can I draft up front? How fast can I, catch people, get around people? You have to see what you can do with a run, not to get into too much of the nitty gritty of racing. But these cars are different from how they have raced in the past in the Daytona 500. The closing speed you'll hear the commentators a lot this week talk about closing speed, how fast, as you catch a car, all of a sudden you're right on top of them. You get these big runs, and then you pull out, and then all of a sudden it's like a parachute drops. These are all things that Justin Haley's going to be experiencing for the first time in a good race car, because the cars he was in last year were not good race cars in the Cup Series. So those are the type of cars that we're going to avoid, right? We're going to avoid the J.J. Aleys, the Brendan Pooles, the B.J. McLeods, Chad Fincham, Joey Gase. Yeah, no thanks. I think there's something to be said about. Let me find him. My watermelon guy, Ross Chastain, starting 14th in the second duel. If Ross Chastain was starting 20th, I would be a lot more interested in it. I'm not so much starting 14th. But that's kind of where I'm at with the duel at Daytona. You look at kind of lock buttons, Blaney Suarez, Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace. I like those four. And then I think I wrote it up. If you play those four, it gives you $13,500 to pick your fifth driver. I think Austin Dillon, Ty Dillon, Justin Haley, all good plays. I think Austin Dillon's probably my favorite to round out that lineup. If you look at Austin Dillon's finishes in the qualifying races, he's finished 9th last year, 6th in 2018, 4th in 2017, 11th in 2016. So he's done well in these races. The three car, everybody remembers in the longtime NASCAR fans remember back in the 90s, the three car won every qualifying race that we're in with Dale Earnhardt. That was back in the day, right? It's not, times are different now. But Austin Dillon, he's going to be motivated. He's going to want to start up front. He wants to win this race because he only has a couple Cup wins, and even a win in a qualifying race is still a win for Austin Dillon. It's good momentum for that team. He's got Alliance cars with him, although Tyler Reddick is teammates in the other duel. So I like that play a lot. And again, when you build this lineup, you're going to have a ton of money left over, right? That doesn't matter. Not for this. So I think, you have $4,000 or $5,000 even left over when you build your FanDuel lineup. Don't worry about it. That's fine. You don't need to start Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Busch because they're all, those might be the favorites to win the race, but I don't think those are going to be the right plays to score the most points. So that's where I'm at on that. If you have any questions, hit me up on Discord. I will try to be on Discord to answer any questions, or, if you want to screenshot a lineup and ask me what I think or whatever. I think we did some of that last Sunday. I'll try to do it an hour before lock. So lineup lock on FanDuel is 7 p.m. Eastern. So from 6 to 7, I'll try to keep my phone handy. You can hit me up on Twitter at @RickyBobbyJr. _Jr. My Twitter handle, TMiller128 is my name on Discord. Good luck to everybody, and we'll have some fun. We'll do this again on Saturday. We'll have write-ups, content leading up to the Daytona 500. Talk to you then.